We're here. Sorry for the delay, folks, but we're on live now, and welcome to this version of TradePending TV. First time we've done something of this format. We got a couple plates of hot wings. Some are mild, some are medium, some are hot. We've got some sour cream. I'm not sure what we're going to do with that yet, Scott. I'll introduce you shortly. We got some milk, water, ranch burst, everything you'd expect for a good hot wings lunch. And again, sorry for the slight technical delay there, but glad you joined us. And we'll try to make this conversation fun and easy. And if you know anything about the Raleigh-Durham Triangle area tech, we're really fortunate to have Scot Wingo with us for our first hot takes.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be your guinea pig for this.
We'll see how it goes. Have you seen any of the YouTube?
I have, yeah, and it was a hard pitch because I'm kind of below mild, so we'll see how this goes.
Will we put that on the right side?
Definitely be doing a lot of dunking.
I'm with you.
Yeah, okay.
I think the one episode I saw had Brian Cranston on it. And I think that he's much more interesting than I am. So you're going to have to carry the most interesting man at the wing table for us.
All right, we'll see. If we talk more, then we eat less, so it'll be good.
That's kind of the point. I don't even know the order of how to do this, but we're gonna figure this out.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe we'll do a little talk and then a topic and then grab a wing.
Talk, topic, grab a wing. I'm just gonna go in and figure it out as we go.
Sounds good.
So here we are in Chapel Hill, offices in Carborough, North Carolina. Thanks for making the commute. It's always an adventure from RTP. Where are you in the triangle?
So I live in Raleigh, and then our office is in Durham, but it's like right on the edge of Durham, so right near RTP.
Okay, yeah, close enough. That's great. Good.
Not too bad.
Good. Well, again, great to have you. And most folks tuning in, I think, are going to find this, and a lot of folks know you in the triangle, but I think a lot of folks probably outside of the triangle, and certainly in our automotive community, don't know your full story. So this is a good opportunity to kind of talk a little bit more about really the path that led you here to TradePending TV, and a little bit more about Scott.
Yeah, I'm from the e-commerce space, so it's been fun to be in the mobility space. Started Spiffy in 2014, and then now we really didn't do much with dealers and that type of folks in the automotive world, but now it's a big focus for us. So happy to share what we're doing there.
I can't wait to learn more, and I think a lot of dealers, I've known of the concept for a good 5 years. I haven't been able to sit down and talk to you about it a lot, but I've been fascinated with, service for 15 years. First business I ran in automotive was an automotive email marketer. So the founder of that company, great guy, was really the first to kind of enable good email collection at a dealership. And he was, back in the late 90s, recognizing that direct mail was probably a little bit aged even then. So I took over once he moved on, but service was about 80% of our focus, and helping dealers get the word out on how they could service and convenience and things like that. And hear about Spiffy, I think it's just the next turn of the crank. So tell me more. I mean, how did you come up with the idea of Spiffy?
Yeah, so a quick backgrounder on me. I'm from South Carolina, University of South Carolina, undergrad computer engineering, more on the software side. Then came up to NC State for grad school, and then got a job at a startup in Connecticut, and realized I like startups, but not cold weather. So moved back.
Where in Connecticut?
It was in the Danbury area.
Okay. Yeah, I lived in Longmeadow, Mass, and drove through Danbury all the time.
Yeah. It was tricky as kind of coming right out of college, because there was no rentals like I was used to down here. Mm-hmm. So you're living in like these weird cottages and basements and stuff. And was newly married and couldn't afford a house. So another reason to move back to the Triangle.
Yeah,
I lived better as a grad student in the Triangle than I did someone making a salary in the Northeast.
Danbury is kind of a funny community, right?
There's not much to do there. It's kind of a bedroom community. You have a Danbury Mall, and that's about it.
But you're an hour to New York City.
Yeah, so we just mostly go to the city.
Yeah,
to do fun stuff.
Yeah, we did the same. We were kind of midway between Boston and New York, and so we got to enjoy both for the 5 years we were there. But my wife was like, I'm done with the cold. That's how we came to Chapel Hill about 9 years ago.
Yeah.
So that was your experience leading up to getting back to the Triangle.
Yeah. So 1995 started Stingray Software, which was software for developer tools, and then sold that in 98. And then in 99 started a company. The internet was exploding, e-commerce was born, and I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I I had sold a company and e-commerce was born. So I was collecting these large Star Wars figures and one of my strange hobbies. And
We're gonna talk more about that later.
yeah, and then in doing that, I discovered there's all these auction sites in the early part of e-commerce, and there was no way to search them all in aggregate. So built a company to do that called Auction Owner. And then that was kind of a crazy 6 months. We sold that company, and then then the internet bubble burst. And then the search engine part of what we're doing wasn't really useful because eBay ended up being the only auction site that survived. So you don't really need a meta search engine when there's only one thing to search. So then we focused in on selling tools. That was part of the startup as well.
Yeah.
And that really took off.
What year was that?
So this is 99, 2000 timeframe.
Perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. And then large companies started using our selling tools. And then the company that acquired us was going to shut us down. Because they were going to compete with Google, which they ultimately did not do well at.
Who's that? Or you can't speak.
It's called an Overture.
Okay.
Most people don't know. Go to Overture.
Absolutely.
Old school. Their strategy was they were going to close us down and then go buy Alta Vista, Dogpile, like all the crappy search engines.
Dogpile,
That's their amazing strategy.
Nothing like rolling up the third through the eighth layer.
Yeah, let me go, roll up the really crappy things to go beat the thing that's better. So then we spun that company out as Channel Advisor in 2001. So most people know me for Channel Advisor. 100%. Then what we grew Channel Advisor to do is one thing that really went our way is we were primarily helping people sell on eBay. And then Amazon came along one day and called us and said, we're going to launch a marketplace. Do you guys want to help us out with that? We bet big on that, which was controversial at the time, but hindsight was obvious. So raised $90 million in venture capital and went public in 2013. And yeah, so that was kind of my e-commerce experience. So at Channel Advisor, we built it up to, we looked at it today, we would call it a $150-200 million software as a service business. That we took from kind of zero all the way up there over it was kind of a 15-year plus overnight success kind of thing. These things, you probably realize this, you kind of grind away at them. It's kind of, building that snowball slowly but surely over time. And then, so that was kind of the background before Spiffy.
And so you stayed a Channel Advisor until, I'm going to get a mid-bite with all the meaty questions, but you started with the mild, I noticed. So
yeah,
I went straight in with the medium.
We're going to build from mild to extra hot.
That's going to be the swan song, so to speak. So how many folks at Channel Advisor are still in Raleigh?
So Channel Advisor. So in 2015, I moved to Spiffy full time, but I was still on the board, and then all the way up to Q4 of 22, when a private equity firm bought a company in our space called Commerce Hub, like 3 or 4 years ago, and then they're doing a roll up, and they rolled up Channel Advisor and took it private in November-ish of 2022. So I'm no longer associated with it. But in the triangle, we have probably about 800, 850 folks.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. I'm so curious about just building a company and with that type of presence, in a community. It's something TradePending hasn't done, somewhat unpurposely. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about that too. But the nature of each business, I think, and maybe the timing of it. We were kind of a decentralized business for a while. But you mentioned the word roll up. And just to give you an idea of some of my first automotive exposure, I was hired by the Trader Publications Company out of Virginia Beach, or Norfolk, Virginia. And I showed up for my first day of work, September 11th, 2006, and I was working for Dominion Enterprises. So Trader was a 50-50 partnership with Cox Communications and Landmark. Cox Enterprise and Landmark Communications. And those were like two obvious media titans. And back in the 90s, they saw these little publications popping up on the street, and they saw classified revenues going down for the newspapers. And they said, you know what, let's roll this up. And so they went around, visited all these mom and pops. You remember the day when I looked for cars in the 80s.
Yeah, you get those, you just spend hours poring over those.
I loved it. Yeah. I mean, it was just like a comic book, for cool cars. Yeah. And then they had different, versions and variations, but they rolled that up so successfully, it became in the end, Auto Trader.
Yeah.
And they successfully disrupted themselves as newspaper folks, and got to work with some folks that were instrumental with that in the early 2000s, which was a lot harder to do in software. you know, which is one lesson that I certainly learned, you know, with
Yeah.
how quickly you can innovate and move and so on and so forth. But
Yeah, software roll-ups are hard because there's always an underlying platform move that you have to make.
right, right.
Whereas with the publication, you get, you know, all these synergies of, you know, moving from decentralized printing to centralized.
Yeah.
You get a better deal on paper and printing. Like, you know, it makes a lot more sense in a physical world.
Dominion was amazing at this, and the CEO is Conrad Hall, who I just was so fortunate to see how he thought and worked. But he was a great storyteller. Round tables, usually having dinner or whatever, and he was talking about his San Diego Auto Trader publications that they had this problem because they had full vertical integration. They had their own print mills, distribution, everything. And he said that the publication got so thick that a standard staple, you know, from whatever they had wouldn't go through all the pages like that. And that's a great revenue problem to have, right? Oh my God, there's so much advertising. I don't know what to do. So he goes and talks to some engineers, and one of them comes back and says, you don't need a bigger staple or a new staple machine thing. What we can do is simply take the staple, file out the edge, and it'll be able to cut deeper to get more pages. And so staple innovation, you know, was able to get this guy out from having to retool his entire print plant. Yeah, I love good innovation like that, which you've been on the cusp of many times, and obviously Spiffy's 7 years in. I can't wait to understand more. But in general, how did you get the idea, Spiffy? Like,
Yeah, so a couple things led to Spiffy. The first was in 2003, I bought a car wash with a buddy of mine. Now, you know, the idea there was to diversify and have something super risky.
I've seen Breaking Bad. I know that.
Super. No, that's not what we do.
No.
Yeah, we don't make crystal meth. Right?
No,
That's
no.
like the #1 car wash joke. And so the idea was to have a cash generating business with land on one side of the equation and then my risky startup stuff on the other. And
That's a good plan.
and I've kind of, you could argue I failed at that because I took that and then actually turned it into something, a risky startup at the end of the day. So bought a car wash in Cary, North Carolina, and then built one in Apex. The first one's what we call a full service, where you get out of the vehicle and then the staff takes care of your car inside and outside. The second one was what is the most popular format now, is an express, where you stay in the car through the tunnel, then you get out and you vacuum it yourself. And so that was step one. And then step two was right after the Channel Advisor IPO, I had my first Uber experience. The way that hit me as an e-commerce entrepreneur, and I should say, one of the things I learned at Channel Advisor is I'm a big Elon Musk fan. And he always talks about core principle thinking. And in his world, it's like physics, you know, how do you get a rocket to the moon and how much, you know, what's gravity and all that stuff. And in my world, it's consumer behavior. So, you know, understanding e-commerce is really understanding underlying consumer behavior. So I studied that a lot. And there's all this really interesting data. After the recession of 08, 09, the US split into a convenience-oriented consumer and a value-oriented consumer. And in the retail world, you see it because all the growth is in dollar stores and wholesale clubs. Then you kind of have Death Valley in the middle. Then you have growth at Amazon, Instacart, Nordstrom, anything that has a convenience factor or a luxury kind of element. So Death Valley is the companies that used to do really well and be convenient, like Sears, JCPenney, Macy's. But then once you had Amazon and whatnot, they lost their customer base because there was something super more convenient. So I had my first Uber experience, and the way that hit me was I'm also, another hobby is I'm kind of a hobby economist. I watch CNBC. I'm a huge economics junkie. And if you look at GDP, consumer goods are 5 trillion annually. Consumer services are 10 trillion. So as people and businesses in the United States, we consume twice as many services as products. So I was thinking, all right, services are going to go digital. I've seen products go digital, and that created $1 trillion Amazon. This is this unique opportunity. This is kind of like the next big platform. That's kind of how I thought about it. And it's twice the size of e-commerce, and it's going to go faster than e-commerce because we all have supercomputers in our pocket already, and 4G going to 5G.
Yeah.
So that was so then I was thinking, well, how do I participate in that? And I started poking around a lot of the they used to call them on-demand economy companies. The only ones that we know now are Uber and Lyft, are the only ones that kind of survived. There's like WAG, which is dog walking. Instacart is kind of in there, but there's like another 100 that didn't make it.
Yeah.
There's several that try to do house cleaning. A lot of people try to do car care. And as I looked at that, what they were doing is they all were from Silicon Valley and they all raised like $100 million. So they were all the cheapest and most convenient. They didn't have to pick a lane because they had so much money.
Right.
And then what they would do is they would burn through all that money and then raise their prices and they would lose all their customers because they had appealed to this value-oriented consumer.
Yep.
And I thought, why is no one obviously just going for the convenience-oriented consumer here and kind of unapologetically saying, we're not the cheapest.
Yeah.
And then a company in Silicon Valley started called Cherry, and they were basically an Uber clone for car washing. And they used the 1099 model. So the app was really good, and it was only $20 to get your car washed. But then they would come, and it was literally an Uber driver, and they would come to your house and say, "Hey, can I come in and get some water?" And they would use a bucket and sponge to wash your car in your driveway. So it's kind of like, well, what's the point of that? You know, I'd rather hire like a kid in the neighborhood to do that.
Right. Right.
So they burned through all that capital and failed. And
how much did they raise?
They raised like 8 to 10.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, the founder's famous. So he, after that failure in Silicon Valley, you fail up a lot of times. So they got hired by Lyft, and then he went to work at Uber. Then he started Bird. So he's one of there's two Travises in Silicon Valley that are famous. There's the Uber Travis, and there's this Travis who started Bird. And then he built a unicorn after all that stuff. Now then Bird didn't like stay a unicorn for they've had kind of a nasty back end story on them.
I'm very impressed, by the way, from the serial entrepreneurs that have so much tenacity to be able to. This is my first time, so I hang on to the experience as much as I can, because it feels like I don't know if I'm as talented as some of the serial folks. You got to be crazy with serial. So maybe
you have to be like ridiculously optimistic.
Yeah. And I
to be foolish.
I was able to experience that in my job. Oh yeah. We're gonna definitely need more napkins. I've got one hot here, which is gonna be super exciting. So
then I was talking to Carl, and I was like, what if we just did this for the car wash as an experiment? So out of our car washes, we got a couple of vans, and we just started experimenting with it, and that kind of was the genesis of Spiffy. But the core kind of our DNA is, hey, there's so number one, we think the car care experience is going digital. And if you give consumers a choice between an app-based thing that comes to them versus the traditional brick and mortar, just like e-commerce, a big section of those will pick that option. And if we can make it 10 times better than the brick and mortar, it will be the convenience-oriented consumer builds loyalty through making their lives easier. And then so that's kind of what we really bet on. The other thing we realized is, as we came into the car care industry, and I don't have a lot of dealer data on this, but if you look at kind of the non-dealer car care companies, like the quick lube companies and those kinds of things, they have really, really low net promoter scores, and especially with women. So what we found is our audience on the consumer side at Spiffy is 60 to 70% female, because they hate the existing car care experience across the board. And a lot of the models have moved to this bait and switch thing. So they'll say, here's a $30 oil change, and you'll go into a quick lube place thinking you're going to spend $30, and that's kind of fake advertising. You can never actually, it's conventional oil you would never put in a modern car. There's a lot of tricks they use.
Right.
So then to add insult to injury, now it's a $99 or $130 oil change. Then they upsell them a bunch of stuff they may or may not need. Right. And then they go home and their husband berates them, like I sent you out for an oil change and you spent $300. Yeah. So what we found is, women particularly hate the car care experience out there.
Interesting.
So that made me feel like, if we can't come in there and do something at least 5 times better, if not 10 times better, then we should pack it up and go home.
I think you understand the problems incredibly well, which is one of my questions, because without my background's in automotive. Well, technically I've been in software since '98.
Going hot. Going up into hot.
Be ready. It is hot.
Okay. I'm gonna do some dipping in.
But my real exploration, into automotive began doing some M&A work. So I got to see lots of different businesses and operators and ideas and things like that, but I didn't come through the customer lens with all the e-commerce experience or research that you had. So I got to know dealers really well, and dealers are awesome customers. They're very demanding. They can be very loyal if you deliver actually something, a valuable service. But most importantly is they have a lot of problems to solve. And those problems keep changing over and over time. And they don't study, I think, consumer behavior, at an individual dealership level. They need vendors and folks that have some vision, for that and things like that. So clearly you're well researched in e-commerce. Now you're in the automotive business, so how much did you, know about automotive? Did you need to validate, size of market, or did you just run with your hunch on just these basic problems on consumer behavior?
Yeah, venture capitalists spend a lot of time kind of figuring out your total addressable market.
Yeah,
they call it TAM.
Yeah,
And
you're good at that too, by the way. Excellent.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's speaking VC.
Yeah, and it's kind of a hogwash, to be honest with you, because people ask what is Spiffy's TAM, and I kind of the answer is every vehicle, right? Because maybe you could take out the value-oriented consumer. So I would argue our addressable market is probably 70% of people that have cars, and then fleets. So since we launched Spiffy, fleets are a whole nother area where we do a lot that we'll get into. So we really didn't spend too much time on it. It just kind of seemed obvious, in the
really
B2B world, like at Channel Advisor, you need to figure out your TAM because it was kind of like, all right, how big is e-commerce now? This is 2000. How big is it going to grow? How many companies are in there? How many will we get? So it's a much more useful exercise in that world. In our world, it was kind of obvious that, if we could just, what was not obvious was how do you make a 10 times better customer experience, and what's that look like?
Yep.
And coming from the e-commerce world, the companies so Amazon is the gold standard here, right? Because, the one-click shopping, if you go back to Jeff Bezos' first shareholder letter in 1997, he says, we're gonna focus on convenience, cheap shipping and selection, just like, and you read that today and you're like, wow, that worked, here, whatever it is, 30 years later. And so
did a great job.
So that's what we didn't know. We knew that if we could solve that, there'd be big demand, but we just didn't know how to solve it.
Right.
So the first thing we did is we launched an app in 2014, and we had 2 vans. And you kind of have to meet my co-founder he's like the opposite of me. He's 6 feet tall, he's ex-Army, kind of scary, kind of an intimidating guy. He's probably 6'3", ex-Georgetown football player. So you kind of need that in our business. So we decided, based on that failure of Cherry, that we would have our technicians be our employees. Like another thing Amazon does is you have to own that customer experience. So we can't say, hey, we're going to be this cool premium brand that saves you time, but here's Joe's Car Wash LLC. We hope they do a good job. We have to own it. So our technicians are our employees. So we launched our app, and the first thing that we noticed was at a physical car wash, 80% of your business is on the weekends. We launched our first app, and all of our requests were for Thursday at office parks. So it's the exact opposite of, and Carl, he cusses a lot too. So he was like, spewed a bunch of cuss words.
It's loud on TradePending.
Because we had planned, our whole schedule was all our technicians were going to work weekends. So we're doing like, 2 10-hour shifts on weekends and then a little bit during the week. So, but I was excited.
Nobody wanted to be bothered on the weekends.
Yeah.
Eh?
So he was frustrated, and I was excited because it was this first data point that said, wow, the brick and mortar car wash experience isn't really delivering. When we give people the choice and it comes to them, they choose something different. And I viewed that as a signal that we were onto something. That was like one of our first early signals. Yeah. And then, like any startup, and then it quickly took so that was the top of the roller coaster. And then we quickly went down the roller coaster, because what we found is 80% of the buildings in the Raleigh-Durham area will not allow detailers on site.
Really?
So it was like
insurance concern or something?
Well, it felt like game over. It was kind of checkmate, because everyone wanted their car washed at work and we couldn't do it. So Carl, being a good salesperson, went and found out, and the objections were, so a lot of traditional detailers, have sketchy backgrounds, and they just kind of show up in vans that are kind of scary. They don't have insurance. And then the biggest concern at the office park level was essentially a environmental concern.
Yeah.
So traditional detailers use super caustic and acidic products because it saves them a lot of time. So if you literally spray the wheels of a car with something that has a light hydrochloric acid, it takes the brake dust away immediately. So it saves them 30 minutes.
And that goes
But
down some drains.
and then it goes right down into the river, which is not good for anyone.
Yeah.
So we invented a system where we bring all the water with us. Part of this zero friction mindset is we can't go to you or an office park and say we need to connect a hose somewhere. So we bring all the water with us in our van. And then we wash every car on a mat. That's like a little bathtub for the runoff. We capture all that. We suck it up out of there, back up on the van into a separate gray water vessel. And then in the day, we reclaim all that water.
Do you enjoy all the mechanical innovations that you've
I'm
done?
I'm a software guy. So
Yeah.
this was
It's
Carl's
clever.
side of it.
Yeah. Carl's clever.
We now do a lot of hardware stuff. So it is kind of fun to do that and marry it with the software. So we've got a lot of that going on. And so that was kind of some of the early, kind of the fun, exciting. And then once we did that, then all the office parks were the other thing that helped us a lot. Early on, we would pitch these office parks on this as an amenity for people. They'd be like, "What's an amenity? Why do we care?" It's kind of even here we are.
Cafe at the bottom is there you go.
But then WeWork came along, and their big pitch was amenities. So then all the office parks were like, "Tell us more about those amenities you can offer." And then now office parks really want people, and they're almost talking about subsidizing what we do and trying to figure out how they kind of come to us, which has kind of been interesting over that arc of time.
I think any big TAM is always interesting to see, what other customer segments you can add.
Yeah.
So I'm sure in 2015, you're like, office parks are never going to pay us money for this. And down there, like, wait a second. Office parks are competing like harder than ever for people to lease space. So why not offer them in? It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's great.
So it was good.
All right. So I've got a whole nother series of questions, but on Spiffy, and then I'm going to go straight up to the hot. That was a little spicy.
Yeah, that was hard.
Could you do it?
I'm going to extra hot.
You're going extra hot? All right. Pace yourself. I'd love to hear your kind of vision in 10 years of how Spiffy's operating, how they're impacting consumers' life, how they engage with other, service businesses in the area, maybe dealerships, what's kind of that long-term vision?
Yeah, so the long-term vision is the way we think about Spiffy is we have three different ways we grow.
I know. I was far away. I'm going ahead. Three different ways.
That's why I didn't dress up. Yeah.
I should have worn that.
So we have different geographies. So there is a local element to what we do, which is kind of fun. With software, you don't really have that. You just kind of set up a server and you can sell your software anywhere. Yeah, right. So that's been fun. And then different services and then different types of customers. So our vision is to basically, take a big chunk of car care, and like e-commerce would. So if we can take 10% of car care and deliver that and be the leader of that industry, we think it's going to happen anyway. So we want to be the leader of that. So that's the real vision.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So it means we got to be everywhere. So our strategy there is we want to be in the largest 40 markets where we own and operate that market.
Good, man.
Yeah, it's easier to talk than eat. And then and then we franchise smaller markets. That's something we started 2 years ago that's going pretty well. So we have 30 markets we're in where we own and operate them, and then we franchise others. So like here in the Carolinas, about 30.
It's great though.
Yeah,
For the smaller markets, we
would never get to them. Our 41st market will probably be international. So we want to be global as well is our aspiration. And Channel Advisor, we ended up with like 20 different countries we were in. I just touched the sauce of that. It's burning my tongue.
It's really good.
Yeah, I'm gonna
maybe I'm
gonna go very light on the extra hot.
You get a little sweat going. Yeah, I don't know if I can talk very clearly after. That's pretty good. Thanks to
what, another one?
This is maybe we'll see how the next question goes. But thanks to Heavenly Buffalo, just down the road.
Yeah, here's a spoon if you want.
That's pretty good. I'm good. I didn't know the sour cream evidently that diffuses things, but
yeah,
feel weird on camera eating a spoonful of sour cream. That's good. We'll try the milk, but that's awesome. Thank you, Matthew. That's an excellent choice.
Yeah. And then service wise, we started with wash and then we added oil change. I'll tell you a story there. And then we're now doing tires. So we want to build up to doing everything for your car. Almost to a point, we want to get to the point where we can say to you, hey, you're a busy entrepreneur. You and your wife have 2 cars. Pay us $200 a year and that'll get you your wash and oil. And then if you need tires or anything like that, we'll always kind of be there for you.
Have you rolled out an annual subscription model anywhere or tested it?
We haven't yet, but that's what we're building up.
I love it.
Yeah. So that's on the roadmap. And then the last one is, we started with consumer But today that's less than 20% of what we do.
Mhm.
80% of what we do is fleets.
Yeah.
And so when we introduced oil change in 2017, we always wanted to do more fleets and we couldn't crack it, but oil change was the key to that.
Right.
So they have this, all these big fleets have lots of oil changes they need to do. Our biggest customers are rental car customers there, where these consumers are renting the cars, and when you turn back in your vehicle, they see if it's at an oil change interval, they ground the car. So they have a strong incentive to get that oil change done because the car is now not rentable. So the opportunity clock is ticking along pretty good.
Right.
So you would probably say, well, certainly they have their own mechanics. They do, but just like the auto world, the oil change is kind of like below an ASE mechanics. It's kind of like below their skill set. They really don't want to do. It's not super economical for them. So they end up not doing a lot of them themselves, and they essentially valet the cars to a quick lube place, which is wildly inefficient. And it adds extra days onto the grounding of the vehicle.
Interesting.
So our pitch is we just come to you, we'll knock out hundreds of oil changes, and we've got a van that can do 200 to 400 oil changes a pop. Yeah, so we've really kind of done a lot of cool mechanical stuff there.
That's awesome.
Some of it's secret sauce. So it's our extra hot sauce.
Yeah, no, I won't even ask what that is.
Can't reveal some of the secrets.
How many markets are you doing fleets in?
Every market.
Every market.
Yeah. And now, our first 5 or 6 markets, we opened consumer first. Now we open a market with first.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of markets like Orlando that's like 95%.
Wonderful.
Yeah. We haven't really gotten around to opening up consumer because every time we add more capacity, it gets absorbed on the fleet side.
Momentum sounds great, man. I love your vision. It's fantastically interesting. Can't wait to hear more how it goes. I think that working with some dealer groups, they've tried to envision some of these things. Have you found ways to partner with retail dealerships?
Yeah. So here's where dealers come in right around the time of the pandemic, like the first 6 months. So call it March 2020 to kind of that summer. A lot of dealerships were interested in talking to us because they said, you guys have kind of figured out mobile service. They couldn't get anyone to go to the showroom because of COVID or to the bay. So then they were just moving the cars around. We call it valet. I think they would call it pick up and
delivery.
Yeah. And so, we started talking to some about a private label. So we can take our software, our van platform, which we think has a lot of unique capabilities, and then our know-how, and then enable dealerships to provide mobile service. And then we had to put that on pause because, as you know, then because of the vehicle shortage, COVID caused a chip shortage, which caused the whole auto world to go crazy selling cars and making more money than they've had before. So just in the last 6 months, they've come back to us and said, okay, we now think that was probably the best period of selling cars we'll ever have in our lives. And we want to talk about mobile service. And then 2 other catalysts really helped us. AutoNation bought one of our competitors called RepairSmith for like $300 million.
That's a great proof point, though, of the partnership between retail dealerships and mobile car carriers.
Yeah. So now dealers are like, what's that mean? Why are they doing that?
Right.
And they were very public about their public companies. So they were very public about saying there'll be a day when you buy the vehicle and you can waive any service plan. You can get your normal come to the bay service plan, or they'll upsell you into a mobile service plan. That's their vision is, And the other thing dealers struggle with is, and you probably know more about this than I do, so I'm kind of would love to learn more about this.
Sure.
Is what our understanding is after 3 years, more than half their customers kind of drop off and stop coming to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So a lot of dealers intuit that if they could make it more convenient, where are they going? I think they're going to more convenience like quick lubes and things.
Yep.
So if you can out quick lube the quick lube folks, then I think you have a shot at keeping it longer. So that's why dealers are coming to us. So we've signed up 6 dealers. We call the product digital servicing, where again, it's under the dealer's brand.
Yep.
So that would be, Leith, Honda, they're not a customer, but just like, and another thing that is big is Ford said they've done all this consumer research in partnership with JD Power, and they have found, consumers overwhelmingly want a mobile service option.
Yep.
And so Ford is now compensating dealers that offer it and even providing a van in some cases.
I can totally see OEMs being very interested in that. I took over that company in 2008 that had 3 or 4 great products, a few that were fairly new. One was an aptly named auto scheduling tool. And so we not only did email marketing, but it was natural for us through the the value chain to say, great, here's your service reminder, click a link and schedule your service. And so we had a really great integration with the website, hell of a user experience. Actually, we iterated it into Flex. Remember Flex? Then iPhones came out.
Yeah.
We were rendered useless, so we iterated back. But there was a competitor in the market, and this is 2010, that for us, convenience was just scheduling an appointment on a website.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we peaked probably maybe 30% appointments we could actually get filtered through the website if it was tied to the marketing efforts and the reminder efforts and things like that. And then OEMs, guess what? Those caught fire and find this other solution, putting it in their network. And a lot of the the stores you may interact with their website today that you say, man, this is a terrible service scheduling tool. Well, that's because it was invented in 2009.
And a lot of it's driven by the DMS, is my understanding.
DMSs are very difficult to integrate with. There's been a decades of stories, around, who owns the data. There was a huge federal lawsuit that in the end kind of validated the fact that dealers are on their data, and access to DMSs needs to be more defined and certainly secure, which that environment's changing. But I can see OEMs who are focused on brand loyalty, which is surprisingly not as high as you would think.
Yeah.
Subaru's at tops, but people like to switch brands. But the stats do show if you service 3 times, you're twice as likely to buy your next car from the same dealership. And so for dealers, we were very focused on sales to service, first service. It can be a first service appointment. That's why you oftentimes, the first one's free.
Yep.
That conversion rate is a really big KPI for dealerships. And then it's the raise to how frequent or how often can you get them serviced and not lose your customer to Jiffy Lube or whoever it may be.
Yeah.
But I can see why dealers would why put in the investment for all the technology, all the mechanical, all the know-how to do mobile yourself. Oh, by the way, all the people.
Yep.
And how can you, just create a better feedback loop for your own customer life cycle with experienced folks like Spiffy. So there's a play there, man. I love it.
A lot of them come to us after what I would call a failure cycle, where they try to do it themselves.
Yeah.
And the common mistakes we see are they'll do what I call the Optimus Prime solution. They're kind of like, well, if I'm going to put a mechanic in a van, that van has to do everything.
Yeah.
So they'll go spend like $200,000 on a van, and it's got, like Optimus Prime. It kind of like converts into a walking robot, picks up the car and changes the tires. Right. And and then they put an ASE certified mechanic on there, and so we don't have for some things we do, but some fleets will go do some pretty kind of light to heavy repair types of things, like Amazon's fleet.
Yep.
But for most consumers, we have a technician there, kind of the equivalent of what you get at a Jiffy Lube.
Right.
And so it's a little bit of a different piece. And the reason they kind of fail with that Optimus Prime problem is once you can kind of do everything, it's really hard to do scheduling. Imagine
you don't know the time and the job.
Imagine a Starbucks had this problem where you had a coffee that could take an hour or 5 minutes, and that would be you see it like if someone goes in the Starbucks and orders 30 drinks, you walk out because you know that you'll never get it. So that's the problem, is you can't really schedule. So by focusing on starting with oil change and car wash, it's a high value for the consumer. It's a high convenience. It's the thing they don't want to take care of. It builds that loyalty. It also gets them used to this concept of mobile. It's just kind of like the first time you bought something online, you didn't buy a couch or a TV. Now you do. You bought a book or a DVD or something like that, because it's kind of like super low risk. So you got to start with those kind of sub $100 transactions, get really good at them, and they're easier to schedule. There's a lot of demand for them.
And I'm sure they identify the higher dollar level 3 technician opportunities that are more complex, that are going to have to get.
Then you're touching
most likely be on a lift with the Optimus Prime setup in the back shop.
Now you're touching the car. You see the check engine light on.
Diagnose the big problem.
Another thing a lot of our dealers are excited about also is warranty work.
Yeah.
Some of them have just focused on that, where they somehow get a list of all the people in their region that need warranty. And this better than I do. They get compensated by the OEM to go do this.
Right.
It's basically the customer doesn't pay, which is nice. So there's no argument over price or any of that kind of stuff. And so a lot of our dealers are just running a van doing those types of things.
That's recalls. I mean, the amount of open recall work for a singular delership is a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, in the customer database,
Yeah.
just bring it in, just
Yeah.
recall, get it fixed, you know, so.
Yeah.
I love the Spiffy opportunity. Great job executing once again for years to get to a huge TAM. I can't wait to watch more. And I'm going to switch gears.
All right, let's switch gears.
Because you're also this area's in my mind probably one of the most well-known entrepreneurs, and you give back to the entrepreneurial community. There's this thing called a tweener fund. I want to learn more about it. I want our viewers to hear about it because I think it's a totally cool concept. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the tweener fund.
Yeah, this kind of springs from my first business, which was called Stingray Software. I went to engineering undergrad and grad school, never took a business class. I took a couple of econ classes because it's kind of my hobby. But I had no idea what I was doing in my first business. It was total calamity. I would have totally failed if I didn't have a couple of mentors. So I went to NC State, and my professor there knew a couple of other entrepreneurs in the area that were kind of 10 years older than I am. And those were great mentors for me. And it got to the point towards the end of that where I was using, an hour a month or two of their time. And I felt bad about it. And, I was kind of like, how can I compensate you for this? They basically said, here in the Triangle area, we have a pay it forward kind of mindset. We had mentors, we're mentoring you, you need to pay that forward. So I've taken that to heart. And so over kind of roughly 30 years, the first 15 years in our startup ecosystem, we just had a lot of lack of startups. So a lot of it was convincing IBMers and Ciscoers and some of these big company kind of people that, if you had an idea and you left that big company, you wouldn't die and starve and lose your house and that kind of thing.
There's a way.
You can always go back to
way to make a living.
There's a way to make a living. And then what happened is between Channel Advisor and Spiffy, I poked my head up and we had so much going on that it was a different problem. It was kind of like a separating the wheat and the chaff kind of problem. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking I've gotten good at scaling companies. And as I've mentored startups, it's very hard to help a startup go through that first part of the journey, which is called product market fit, where you have an idea and then you have to build the product, get customers, and then iterate. That's really, really hard to coach someone on because you just kind of have to like go through the desert and find the oasis on your own. There's
I got some stories.
It's like a full-time job to help someone with that. And it's really hard to be a part-time mentor on that.
Totally.
Where I've gotten really good at helping people is if you can get to $1 million, I can help you get to 5, 10. How do we scale this thing? Let's try some wacky ideas, that kind of thing. So I was thinking, well, how do I get a list of those companies? And it didn't exist. So I created it. And I think of it as like the Goldilocks list of companies in the triangle. And I wanted it to be about 50 companies. So I backed into, if I drew a line at $1 million revenue up to 80, I came up with a list of.
What year was that?
This is 2015.
2015. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I started.
50 was a magic number then.
And then I like to come up with wacky words. So I borrowed tweener and I kind of attached it to it. So it have a little bit of
perfect.
Kind of sticks in your head a little bit.
And it makes total sense. So when are you so big you don't qualify for tween?
80 million.
80 million.
Yeah.
So that's the tween?
Yep.
Yeah. Man, that's
a big top end.
It's a big top end. Yeah.
So overdoing it, we've had like 20, I call them graduates. We've had 20 graduates. So
awesome.
Bandwidth, Pendo, Channel Advisor, SideQuest. There's been a bunch of them that have graduated off there.
Yeah.
Or if you get acquired, you kind of come off with if you're no longer like headquartered in the trunk.
Right.
Yeah. And if you guys are acquired, you'll have to come off with.
We'll see what happens.
Or you hit 80 million.
I will say, Scott, man, I've been doing this in this market since 2015, but my customers, we got a great presence in North Carolina, thanks to great customers like Leith to support us early and Hendrick Automotive Group and things like that. But for us to survive, and once we had that settled product market fit, you had to drive, and you just got to go, and you got to knock on doors. One great thing about auto dealers, you can walk in the door and get to the decision maker pretty quickly. Yeah. So for me, I bought a Ford Focus and put about 30,000 miles on it the first time.
Yeah, but usually their names on the building too.
Yeah, and their names
to Mr. Lee.
Mr. Lee would be great to meet with.
Yeah.
But for us, I think I've done a very poor job of local networking.
Building your business,
and it's probably a good vision to be able to give back, because what this market gave me was great talent. And that was one reason my wife and I chose to move here. That because if I failed, I could still go get another job. That would be okay. But it's a thriving market, and frankly, what I've learned by not being a great networker necessarily, or as involved as someone like you and other folks. John Fallberg, he's a professional coach to me. I don't know if you know Fallberg, but he's a fantastic guy. Triangle Angel Partners, got to know a few folks over there. They got rejected by the NC Idea Fund. You want to get fired up, for product market fit, put an application in to NC Idea and then get rejected, because I was determined. Don't fucking tell me no.
Every no, it's like a little chip on your shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. I always say I love winning like anyone else. So, and NC Idea, thank you for not giving me any cash, because that really fired us up to drive the Ford Focus a few more miles. But it's a wonderful support mechanism, and the feedback we had actually in the application process was super interesting. I encourage any business to do that. But anyhow, I think that Raleigh-Durham, from my observation, has been challenged to create kind of that unicorn mentality. I've heard folks say that a lot of people sell out too early, or they don't have the grand vision of, becoming the unicorn. What's your view on that? Like, why are we all selling out too early? Is it the VCs that are pulling us also to Boston? Now you got to come to Boston. Oh, you got to go out there. But
it's the maturity of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So when I did Stingray, I had to personally guarantee. I was 25 and I couldn't travel and rent a car at that time. You had to be like 28, or it was ridiculous. And I had more personal guarantees. I had $1 million in personal guarantees, because like our rent, like everything I did, I had to personally guarantee.
I'm impressed you were able to get that guarantee.
And it was ridiculous, and my net worth was probably like, I had a used Honda, like a 1985 Honda. So it was probably worth like generously $5,000. And so it was ridiculus. And so once I had that first exit opportunity, I snapped at it, because I was kind of like, man, I need to fix my balance sheet here. But then by the time you do your second company, now you have your personal balance sheet in order, and you can take a bigger swing. So I think it just takes more serial entrepreneurs, and we've got a lot now.
Yeah.
So we've got like 30, 40, 50. So I think we're at
second
this
time
really big
startup.
Yeah, where a lot of them are on their third or fourth company and really kind of taking it.
I think that qualifies perfectly, because I mean, as a business owner, I can tell you, like, there, as a first timer, there's just, you have, people are like, oh man, you're so risky. I de-risked until I was 39 years old to start. And I did it on other people's dimes. I tried to make mistakes, and I tried to figure out, what I was really good at, what I wasn't good at. I was not 20 years old and could eat ramen. I had kids and things like that. So it was like, once you get product market fit, and you can see a growth path and develop your organization, which we're predominantly, we got a big sales team, great sales team, and they support our customers incredibly well too, but all throughout the country, for that door knocking capability. But I do see, the next time around, I could take more risk, then I can hang on a little bit.
There's actually a bell curve where, I guess it's the opposite of a bell curve. So a smiley face. So there's a lot of people who get into entrepreneurship in their 20s, kind of before they have kids and the mortgage and all that. And then there's another one, kind of the sunsetters, if you will, that they build up their balance sheet, and now they're ready to take some risk. The kids are kind of older, and they can kind of that 40 to 50 range.
I saw a chart. I was at South by Southwest in 2012, which I drew some inspiration to on my product. Management is, I'm not a real product manager, but I'm a product guy, I guess. I love seeing problems and trying to solve them. And there was a chart in front of the audience, and it showed, average age of a successful, entrepreneur. And it was, on the bell curve, but it was basically like, if you're in your 20s, your chance of failure or success was really low. And there was this clear peak right at 39, like 38, 39. I'm like, all right, well, I got like 5 years. I got to get some experience.
Set your sights.
I got to play to the curve. So 39 it is. But I hope there's more entrepreneurs, I think, in our area that get supported by folks like you, and also funds to say, you know what, I can take the job. There's a structure to this, product market fit, scale, because I think a lot of folks, just don't understand the available resources that are out there to help.
So I started, still continuing.
Yeah, please.
So started the 20.
I'll keep eating. I've been hungry today. I'm going one more extra high, just to.
I nibbled on
the
camera. I've got them. We can talk if I haven't.
It's pretty hot. You're good. We're talking.
Take a big bite. I'll ask you.
Oh, that's. Sweat this one. So yes, please go ahead.
Don't put your finger in your eye.
No, I won't. I won't.
If you do, we'll have to rush you out to the eye.
I may have to borrow your milk.
Okay, so I've been doing this tweener list since 2015.
Yes.
And around 2020, around COVID time, all these people started saying there was also a lot of crowdfunding going on and stuff like that. Then also there's all these angel groups in the triangle, and a lot of them don't invest a lot, and they tend to drift towards more big companies, which is kind of weird. You know, they're kind of risk adverse angel groups, which is we can talk about why.
Yeah.
And then so all that was swung around, and then all the local VCs who I know and love and support, they're raising bigger funds, which means they can only have a certain number of investors. So they've raised their minimums from like 50,000 to 100,000 to like $400,000, which if you're new to angel investing, that's like a huge commitment, right? And it's over many years, 3 to 5 years. So I joined a couple. There's been a lot of innovation on this and around a company called AngelList. The first thing we did is called syndicates, where you can have a list of investors, and then you go to that list and say, hey, we're thinking of investing in this startup, and then you create what's called an SPV. It's a lot of work though, because you got to kind of herd cats on both sides of the equation. So I looked at that and decided that wasn't really interesting. Also, if you look at the data I've collected next to the tweener list, because of that $1 million arbitrary line I drew, there's 1 or 2 failures a year, but that's about it. And the traditional VC thinking is you invest in 15 companies, 7 fail, 7 are zeros, 5 you get some of your money back, and 2 are the winners, right? So it's a hits business.
Which is not true. I'm offended by it because they want you to fail as fast as you can. But maybe I just need a little.
Yeah. There's maybe you don't need venture capital. Yeah. It's not necessary.
Right.
If you don't have to get it, don't take it. So then I also noticed like a lot of the local VCs miss some of our biggest hits. So Pendo has one of local VC. There was like Archive Social. There was like 6 of these big exits, $100 million plus exits that had no local VC in them.
Crazy.
So ultimately, AngelList came out with this product called a rolling fund. And it's kind of like the syndicate married with a VC, but kind of brings all the best of both of them. So what happens is investors subscribe just like a SaaS product. And we put the minimum at $5,000 a quarter, and the minimum is a year. So it's a $20,000 commitment.
Very consumable.
They have to be accredited investors, which means they have to have a net worth minus their house of $1 million or make $200,000 a year.
Okay.
I like that.
A lot of people in Triangle can.
This is a passion project for me, and I don't want to get sued by some crazy lady that, some cat lady that invests her life savings in this and isn't really understanding that there's a lot of risk involved. And then we started the tweener fund. So I started socializing this idea. Literally everyone I talked to said, this should have existed. Where do I sign up? So launched it in January of 2022. And quickly, AngelList said the average rolling fund starts with $200,000 in their first quarter, and then they grow. We started with 600, and now we have over 800,000.
Wow.
And the idea is traditional VCs pick winners, just like some mutual funds would, right? So if you go to like a Fidelity mutual fund, they're out there trying to pick winners. Janus 20 is trying to pick the next big 20 tech companies. This idea is more like Vanguard, where we're just trying to build an index. So we're basically saying we want to write small checks into every Triangle company raising money that's earlier stage, so we don't miss one of the big winners. So part of that is we do an insane number of investments. So most VCs over the life of their fund do 15. We do 15 a quarter, which is kind of crazy. So in the first year, we did 48 different companies, so 12 a quarter, and then just did another 10 this last quarter, so about 60 companies.
Are there other tweener funds out there that you were able to learn from, or
there's other rolling funds, but we're the first people that have kind of tried this combination of things. And then what really makes it work. So the AngelList folks say we have the largest number of LPs of any of their rolling funds, and it's the local angle. People feel a local affiliation, and they want to support the local element. And then our pitch to the entrepreneurs is like my pitch to you would be, your head's down, you're spending time driving around, going to your customers. We can, at some point, you may need a bat phone. You may want to say, hey, my sales team's reached some limit. Can someone help me figure this out? And we have 150 operators as LPs that can come in and work with you to figure that out. And some of them, some of them are in the mobility world, some of them are in the healthcare world. So that's the pitch to the entrepreneur is it's a very easy check to get. We typically write between $50,000 and $100,000. It's not going to be a game changer. Usually we're
it's a connecting,
but it's a local connection,
Yeah.
and it's a bunch of operators that can help you out if and when you need it.
it's not always about the money. Well,
Got a question from the audience.
what?
It's a
Is that allowed?
question. It's allowed. Could you see TradePending's value a car instant offer or appraisal as a part of a Spiffy service?
That's why he's here. We're gonna film with wings, and then we're gonna tell them about,
Yeah.
about what we can do. So our philosophy is, from day one is, the more information that I can bring to a consumer, throughout their entire life cycle of ownership or purchasing, the better off they are. And back to South by Southwest. So we created our own market report. It doesn't just show the value of your car, it shows you about local supply, how that's changed. What does demand mean? How long does it take to sell that car? Because that really, in the end, as we certainly learned the last 2 years, determines value. And we're the only valuation engine that shows comps. So these are just proof points on the more information I can share, the quicker that consumer and that dealer are going to be able to get together. Basically, you're building trust and confidence through data and everything else that we buy and sell in the world, whether it's houses or stocks. I mean, you do so with a lot of data points as far as what other people are doing, what the other market's trading for. So our mission really is to inject that information at any point that a consumer is thinking about their car. So yeah, my pitch to you is, why, end with just a $100, car care service? Why not deliver to them? By the way, here's your market report on your vehicle. Just want to make sure you have all the information to know. This is how your car, would how fast it sells, what the supply is, what the potential value would be, so on and so forth. So consumers say, hey, great, it's value add. I'm glad I spent $100. My car is worth 30 grand.
We have a couple interesting insights on that. So when we first started, we have our car wash menu. It starts at just an exterior. We only do that at office parks, and then a basic, we call it Spiffy, a Spiffy and shine, which includes a wax, and then a detail, and then a super high end detail. And we priced that super high end detail at like $300, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot of those, much to my surprise.
That's for a super high detail, it's a fair market price.
Yeah. And then I was curious and we started surveying, and 85% of the people that get that are selling or trading in their car.
Oh, really?
Yeah. From a lease.
It's always
So I feel like we get this early signal that there's a buying event about to happen.
I get a lot of questions like, should I go fix this dent or ding or this thing before I go trade my car? And I always tell them, like, detail it.
Yeah.
But don't actually fix the ding, because the dealer can do it cheaper than you're going to end up doing in the end. And they'll deduct the $150 they're going to spend. It's okay,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that we'll have many interesting conversations even when we're finished with some wings.
And then a lot of our dealers come to us, and now, part of this digital servicing is we give the dealers an app. It's the first time they've ever had an app. They love it. And their first question, that they have a bunch of stuff they want to add to that. So a lot of them want to add the ability to.
I love dealers, man. They have, it's a perfect customer because they will tell you what it is.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And then so a lot of them want us to offer in-bay servicing right in the app, which is so give them a choice. So we're doing that, and a lot of other things, DMS tie-ins and all that. But we've had several of them talk about, could they offer a offer to buy the vehicle right in that.
Absolutely.
So, that's
So
a couple of touch points there.
You probably know that NADA data just came out with their 2022 data 2 days ago, which is like my Bible, even though sometimes people argue the accuracy. But anyhow, 78% of used vehicles that dealers retailed last year came from consumers, whether on trade for new, trade for used. We know there's tax benefits, for applying a trade and the purchase price of the vehicle. And for the first time ever, 17% of the used vehicles retailed by dealerships came from auction. Guess who's at the auction now? It's your rental car fleets.
Yeah.
That's where they're getting their vehicles.
Yeah.
That number was twice that. It was 34% 20 years ago. So dealers, and luckily it's not a tailwind, it's just a small fact that no one focused on for many years. Dealers for long have had the majority of their used vehicles they retail come from consumers, but they have very little systems in place to be part of that ecosystem. Some of them are gimmicks like, get your, cash offer, this and that, with some big brands. And we support some technology to be able to help dealers and able to do that. But the wider net, the better. And I think of it as like touch points, right?
Yeah,
and just provide those things.
Okay.
That'll be fun.
Yeah.
All right. So Let's Cleaner Fun, hell of a job. Amazing progress in 14 months. Have you failed? Like besides don't say Stingray, but you're on a roll here, man.
I
You're
get
very
that question a lot, and yeah,
I don't know why.
the answer is I fail every day.
Yeah.
And, you probably sympathize with this. So I'm constantly testing things, but the company can't be the test, right? The little stuff is the test. And then you take the knowledge from those losses and build the company up. So today, Spiffy will run 10 different tests and 9 of them are going to fail, but they're not bet the company kind of things. And then, the one that works will pay for those 9. And then we learned from the 9, we'll create 5 more tests that will, we just keep iterating.
Sounds like you fail fast too, learn from that, put it in logs, don't try it again, but try to iterate and apply. I love it.
We'll see how this does. This could be the first of 100 wing episodes, or it could be first
I
of
don't
1 and
know.
1.
I don't know if I can handle 100. I may have to have a sit-in, but
You did good on that extra hot.
I ate more. I was hungry. But all right, we got to talk about. I did do one. Yeah, it was much. It helped with the lips too, by the way. It's a little tip. You're a live music fan, I hear.
Yeah.
So I am a live music fan too. Spent some time in Austin. Went to UT in Austin for graduate school. It's a big fan. So who's the last band you saw live?
Last band. This is gonna sound weird.
Sort of.
Lizzo.
Lizzo, yes.
It was my daughter's birthday. We took her. You'll love this story. We took her and 3 of her friends to Tampa. It was my miles.
Yeah.
It sounds extravagant, but I was
No.
miles. And we're at the Lizzo. The girls were taking forever to get ready, and I'm on Twitter. And Lizzo tweets, "Is it anyone's birthday today?" And I was like, her new album has a song called. The clean version is "Today It's Your Birthday, Girl." And I was like, my daughter does. And then so this is funny. This drives my daughter crazy with it. Then Lizzo slid into my DMs, and she said, "We'd like to pull your daughter up on stage at the concert."
Lizzo?
I did.
What?
Yeah. So we get to the concert, and I'm like,
Yeah,
never
never fails. He goes to concerts, he gets on stage.
No one's contacting me. I was like, this probably isn't going to happen. And then after the first act, I got a direct message that said, "Where are your seats?" And then this dude came about halfway into Lizzo's set and got my daughter and took her on stage.
How's your daughter?
She's 16.
My daughter's 17.
Yeah, it was a big dad moment. So I set the bar ridiculously high.
Yeah, but you're fantastic.
It was just like one of those things where the universal line. So she has like a selfie with Lizzo, and we got video of her.
I love these kids' music taste. It's so diverse now. I love it. Like my daughter loves a little hip hop, she loves country, she loves this and that. What's your next show? You got anything on the books?
So my favorite group is called Group Love, and I've kind of had this comical trying to see them 10 times, and then something will come up in my life, or they were going to do a really nice kind of intimate tour through North Carolina, and I had like 4. I was going to actually follow them through North Carolina.
Yeah.
And then like they got the lead singer had like laryngitis or something.
Matt, you know this as well.
We got tickets.
Yeah. So that was super disappointing. And now they're touring with Pink, so I'm trying to figure out how I can intersect with that. I'm not a huge Pink fan, but I'll go check out Group Love. A couple of new bands I like. There's this kind of UK band called Wet Leg that's kind of fun. I like kind of edgy, independent, all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We're Cat's Cradle is somewhere around here.
Yeah, just right down the road.
So that was been my go-to for a long time.
I love checking the website. I mean, there's always
hard
been
when you have kids.
well, exactly. Which might have gone since. So I'm gonna get lots of live music at the Cat's Cradle. But I got Taylor Swift show coming up.
Oh, nice.
Next month. So
I gotta figure out how you get tickets.
I got a second mortgage on the house, and you could go too. But my daughter did part of her graduation present and stuff. So we're taking the whole family. I've been instructed that I've got to wear a uniform. Okay. So you got to dress up for these things. I tell you this. So you dress up like one of Taylor's videos and things like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are you gonna go 23 or?
I'm thinking I'm more like a Wildest Dreams, guy with the bomber guy with the jacket.
You can do a cheerleader or shake it up.
My son is going to do that. He's 14. That, and then I'm getting drugged to, if you've ever heard this band, which everybody's going to judge me on this, but I turned my daughter on to Hippie Sabotage. It's I don't even know how to describe it, but it's kind of hip hop, slow beat. Anyhow, they're heavy bass. Like it's not a show that most people enjoy, but I do. It's going to be great. But cool. Yeah, I don't get to enough live music. We should go to a show together.
We should. That'd be fun.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I think that's really it for the wings for me. Oh, you mentioned the Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
So my son and I religiously watch Mandalorian. What's your view of the Mandalorian?
So my view of all Star Wars stuff is I thought we were only gonna get 3 movies and be done.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm in like the bonus round.
Yeah.
So I typically love anything.
Yeah.
I'm not super picky on it. So I think season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian were awesome.
Yeah.
It's gotten a little sideways. Lizzo was on the last episode,
Yeah,
kind of tying it all
yeah,
together.
there you go.
My daughter loved that and thought it was funny. It was a little bit of a weird departure for Star Wars, but I think they're just having some filler before they hit us with a big one. But really, my favorite has been Andor. I really liked that.
Yeah,
Like kind of the slow burn and a little more character development.
I love them all. I'm just glad they're still doing it. You know, honestly, like from my childhood, growing up with it, for my son to not have like exposure to that, I would have been totally wrong.
Yeah, I think we're getting up.
This is great. Scott, thanks
Nice meeting you.
so
Thanks
much.
for having me, everyone. Thanks for the
The
wings.
wings
They were
were good.
delicious. I'm gonna go throw up in a bucket.
Yeah, and Trade Pending TV will be back with probably not eating wings, but I think we should do this again. Thank you all for joining, and thank you to the fantastic Trade Pending marketing team for putting all this together. See ya.